And I'll start off by saying, though, one of the main reasons is right at the start of the launch, the announcement that not every Pokemon was going to be in the game, notably including my favorite, which was kind of partially part of it, not to be a little petty, but
I think you weren't the only one. I remember a lot of people were upset about that. I was upset about that.
well, I mean, it was just like they finally hype up. It's the first big console entry. Oh, and it's missing about half the content. Hey guys, and welcome back to our second episode of the Gaming and Collecting Podcast.
Today we're going to be covering a multimedia franchise that is near and dear to our hearts, Pokemon.
In this episode today, we will be discussing our first encounters with the series, the card game, the anime, and of course, the games.
Thanks for tuning in.
As we discuss the games that shaped us. So, where do we begin?
Well, we can start with that VHS tape that we had.
Oh boy. So, our first real encounter with Pokemon back in the day was we had this portable VHS player for going out on like car trips and stuff. You could plug it into the car and play VHS tapes.
I think we had it for like whenever we went camping or
Camping
like
or
went to NASCAR races with our family.
So anytime we were in a long car ride. But it came with like a selection of like VHS tapes to play with it, and one of them, the first one we listened to, was actually this Pokemon VHS, and it came with 3 episodes, and I will always remember the 3 episodes. It was the like the fighting tournament episode where he the one where his like Primeape had like its like spotlight episode before it went away forever. Then it was the Muck episode where he catches the Muck. And then the Diglett episode.
Yep.
And I always remember those 3. And, you know, by that point, I mean, we knew what Pokemon was because, like, it was everywhere at that point.
Yes.
Because going around the schools, now the one thing we really didn't have a lot of experience with was the card game.
Yes.
But we saw the card game.
I think we had
everywhere.
a couple of...
we had cards.
We had a couple of cards, but, like, we did not play the game.
No. Well,
we just collected them
let's
and
be
went,
fair, though.
I have a pretty Bulbasaur! Or something like that.
Let's be fair here, though. I didn't know a single person who actually played the game.
I actually think now it's more popular to play the card games than it was back then.
So when I was growing up in school, I'd always see kids with just binders, just full of the cards, and they'd never take them out. They'd just display them. But anyways, that's really about as much as the card game as we really know. Like we do want to mention we did see the card game back in the day, but it was really kind of just a thing like that was popular for a while. But anyways, that VHS tape was the real first encounter we had, and it was the classic 4Kids dub.
Yep.
With all the classic voices.
The infamous rice ball that was a donut.
Well, we didn't get to see that episode, but we did eventually encounter that. And you know, back then, we were just kind of confused, and we were always like, I guess that's just what Japanese donuts look like.
Yep.
Never questioned it as a kid.
Nope.
But anyways, after that, I mean... we watched the anime because it was always on TV.
Oh, yeah.
Always on in the morning on Cartoon Network or, God, I think it was on Kids WB in the morning, too.
Yep.
Every now and then. But other than that, we actually missed the first 2 generations of Pokemon growing up. Like, we had Game Boy, I mean, I had a Game Boy Color as a kid, but I never had Pokemon either Red, Blue, or Yellow, or Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Our first real encounter was, the first game I got was Pokemon Sapphire for Gen 3, which was ironically during the first burnout period that most hardcore Pokemon fans had. So it was kind of like a weird like point in the series where like most people were like super into Sapphire, but it wasn't like the massive cult following it was at the time. So I played the hell out of Sapphire growing up, and then eventually Fire Red and Leaf Green came out.
And that's when I kind of started playing. That's when I got my first one, which was Leaf Green.
Yep, we both had Leaf Green.
But at the time, I don't think I was, like, as invested with video games at the time. So I never finished it, unfortunately. And I want to finish it, but I have no idea where the cartridge went, and I don't have a Game Boy Advance, so I can't play it if I want to play it. But I want to finish it someday.
But yeah, I mean, so at that point it was kind of like it's weird because Gen 3 is kind of like that one section that it has its hardcore fans, but then it's kind of also like it's also the point where a lot of the really hardcore fans just didn't play. So it kind of gets like overshadowed by like its predecessors. But I remember playing the hell out of Sapphire, and then especially Emerald when Emerald came out later on, which was basically just the superior version of Ruby and Sapphire. And I always remember because I picked Trico first, which was I don't know, I just liked the way the Pokemon looked out of the 3 starters. And from then on, I kind of just have always had an affinity for the grass type starters ever since.
I'd say the same for me. I always usually pick the grass type. On rare occasions, I did pick different types. Like, I'm pretty certain with Pearl, I chose the water type, which was the little penguin. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Piplup. Yep, that's what it is. And I think I picked Cyndaquil.
For when we get to Heart Gold
and Soul Silver. But for the most part, I am grass Pokemon all the way. My favorite is Bulbasaur. In this room alone, there's like 8 Bulbasaurs right now. Can you confirm?
Yeah, they're everywhere around here.
Yep. I'm obsessed. He's my favorite. Best boy.
Anyways, we played a great amount of the Game Boy Advance games when they were out, but then it really took off for us with the DS games of Diamond and Pearl. I remember because I had Diamond, and Alex had Pearl growing up.
Yes, I also distinctly remember that during that time was when we had the cheat cartridge.
Yeah, our first experience with Action Replay.
So I remember playing it through, and then Bill was like, "Oh, here's the cheats. Here's all the Master Balls and all the rare candies." So when I went into the Elite Four, I had level 100 Pokemon for the whole battle, and I just wiped through it way too easily. And after that, I never did that again. But that kind of actually was what got me into playing Pokemon, so now I don't do that anymore. But, no. But I did do that.
Keep in mind, we were like 12, 11 around then.
Yeah, we were pretty young.
13 at the most.
Cheating was very acceptable in our minds.
Who cares? It's not like we were playing competitively.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that was the mad power trip of getting an Action Replay. But I always remember Diamond and Pearl was interesting, although I remember going back to it now, it's really hard to play because it is incredibly slow. But then after that, I mean, it kind of slowed down for a while. I mean, we still kind of watched the anime while that was out until I think about halfway through, and then we kind of stopped for a while.
Yeah, we kind of took a break, moved on to other things.
Yeah, and then Black and White came out.
Yes.
And I remember picking up Black and being like, wow. I remember thinking the graphics were insane. Everything was different. Mm-hmm. It was also like the first one, because for the majority of the games, the regions were all kind of based off of Japanese areas of Japan. And Black and White had the Innova region, which was like very American based.
Yes.
Which kind of like it was an appealing thing at the time, being from America, and it was kind of a different take on it.
Yeah, I feel like it was more, I don't know, not inviting, but like more. It was a fresh start. I wouldn't say, it wasn't like a fresh start, like a new chapter.
I wouldn't say inviting. It was fresh.
Yeah, it was fresh and new.
Because especially after like the first 4 gens, where it was very much the same kind of like setup, and also it had a very like basic. It wasn't a confusing thing. It was easy to pick up. Like the map was very simple, but yeah, no, it also had the best story in the entire series.
The plot was really interesting, and I think I ended up replaying Black and White about 4 times. And then I just found it really interesting.
And then kind of out of nowhere, rather than getting a third improved version like we normally do, then that's where we got the sequels, Black and White 2, which just was basically a continuation with all the Pokemon, because Black and White was kind of unique at the time where it only had original Pokemon.
Yeah, and it takes place like 2 years after, and it kind of takes the main villains of the last one, and they're kind of revamped, and they're back, and they're more prepared than ever. So it's kind of like a continuation of the story to kind of it picks up where things left off.
Yeah, and Black and White also had kind of like older characters to begin with, so they were a bit more relatable, especially at the time we were playing.
And it was like a little more mature. Like it had more.
It was dark.
Yeah, it was dark. Like the main goal of the villains of Black and White was to segregate people from Pokemon, which like was kind of an interesting plot. Like compared to some of the other teams, like Team Galactic and Team
Aqua and Magma and Rocket, who all had interesting like motives, but their motives were really flawed when you really thought about it. Especially Team Aqua and Magma, because that would just never work.
Yeah, and this one actually kind of had an interesting motive and like kind of good reason behind it. But then as you go through the story and you kind of find out more and more, and especially when you get to the final. To the Elite Four, then you're like, oh, and then like...
And then shocker, the Elite Four final champion isn't actually the final boss, and suddenly you have a whole new dungeon to follow.
Yep.
And that boss that you still are infuriated by.
Yes.
Because, surprise, the guy who you thought was the villain wasn't actually the villain, and the guy who was obviously the villain became the villain.
Became the villain.
Oh man, I love that game. It's like so solidly designed.
Yeah. I replayed it 4 times. Like, that's how much, like, I loved it. Like, it was just so enjoyable. And, like, I've even, like, been tempted to pick it up again. And I feel like it's the only one that I could, like, go back to after the 3D. After transitioning to the 3D games.
Which, speaking of that, so after Black and White 2, it was kind of like, that's when the 3DS came out. So, I mean, there was a bit of, like, a anticipation. Because it's still, by this point, the Pokemon had never seen a console game. And it was, well, an official console game. There was spin-offs, but it was kind of hyped because it was like the first like 3D one. And I remember this was like probably the most hyped I have ever been for a Pokemon game, probably ever. I still remember going to the GameStop the day X and Y came out because I actually had X pre-ordered, one of the rare times I pre-ordered games back then.
Yep.
And I remember going into the store. One young kid, nothing but college kids. I was like, yep, the meme is true.
Yep.
Which is hilarious because Grand Theft Auto 6, I mean not 6, Grand Theft Auto 5 like came out also around that time, and I remember going into the GameStop and it was nothing but kids, so which is a little disturbing, but unrelated. But anyways, getting back to Pokemon X and Y, I still remember I picked that one up, and I remember because I was off work for a couple of days because I believe we had a vacation day. And I remember picking it up and just, like, nonstop, like, 3 days straight. That's all I did.
Yep.
And I remember because it was so new. Everything was in 3D. So you were kind of, like, relearning things. Like, they tried a lot of stuff with X and Y. Not all of it worked, I'll admit.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there was some cool stuff, like the multiple rival system where you had, like, 5 rivals. You kind of were, like, a gang. No one was really an enemy kind of thing.
No, it was definitely interesting. Like, it was a change in dynamic. It was kind of like, there's definitely some good changes. Like, the Mega Evolutions. I think so many people fell in love with those. And then were so upset when they were taken away.
Well, that and the fact that the game just hands you a Charizard like an hour in.
Yep.
Which I always thought was hilarious. But one thing, though, I'll admit about X and Y is, well, I have a lot of nostalgia for it. It is an incredibly flawed game.
Oh, yeah.
Because the pacing is just bizarre. Like, you get to the first gym, like, nothing. Like, and then you're all of a sudden handed a Charizard. But then the gap between the first and second gym is, like, hours. Like, it takes forever to get to the second gym. And then by the time you're there, it's, like, all of a sudden, like, sporadically to the third. And then it's, like, a gap again. And it's weird. Like, it's such an odd pacing. And then the villains.
Yeah, the villains are so... we actually had to look up who they were.
Yeah,
because they were so unmemorable.
We forgot who Team Flare was.
Nope.
Like, to the point where all I remembered is their motive was really stupid. So, of course, then I remember, all right, they care about, like, making the world fashionable and beautiful. Yep. And then it's revealed at the end that this guy who's very obviously, like, a bad guy, but kind of they trick you into thinking he's a good guy. It's like, oh no, he's the bad guy. And he wants to freaking obliterate
obliterate the world.
Not the world, but, like, everybody on the world, and then reform it with just Team Flare. And I'm like, what a turn of events. Like, it was a very oddly sporadic game, and I still don't really know what to think of it. But I still am nostalgic for it, just for kind of how unique it was at the time.
I think like the flaw of Team Flare almost leads into like the location they base the game off of. Like they base the game off of like France
like
and
Paris,
like Paris.
France.
And I think they kind of went like, I guess France and Paris is like very, you know, you think of like fashion, you think of like all these like couture, all these things. I think they kind of tried to take that.
I mean, I love I love the region.
With,
like the Kalos region is such a nice like area to explore because there's all sorts of different things, like the big city with like the third person perspective, which was new at the time, and then all the different mountain regions. There's this weird like first person kind of dungeon crawl dungeon, which is bizarre. I always remember that part. But yeah, it was such an odd game. It also was the beginning of the what I like to call the simplification of the Pokemon formula, where the game holds your hand considerably.
Yes.
And it's not like you can ignore the hand holding, because it's very, like, as I said, you get a Kento starter within like an hour of the game along with your original starter. So it's kind of like, okay, I got 2 starters now.
And I think that's also when they changed the mechanics of the experience share.
Yes, but in previous games, the experience share, it was an item that you got late in the game, and you could share it with another Pokemon, and that Pokemon would get half the XP that your Pokemon got.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a way to help with grinding. Starting with X and Y, the experience share became an item that you would turn on.
Yep.
And it would give every single Pokemon in your party at the time half XP. But if you had, say, like one Pokemon out at any given time, like say you switched from like your starter to a secondary and then to another, every Pokemon that was on the field would get the full XP.
Yep.
So it was a very broken system.
Oh yeah, and you could actually break it further with like items and stuff.
Granted, you don't have to turn it on, but it's there, so it's kind of like,
it's kind of the temptation almost. Like you kind of want to do it.
It's not a flaw, like an impossible flaw. It's just a thing to take note of.
Yeah. Because I know for me, like, I would use the, like, lucky egg item, which, like, I don't remember if that's exactly what it's called, but I think it is, but it would actually double your experience. So if you added that onto the experience share, boom, your experience would go up so quickly. I think I had, like, level 90 Pokemon going into the Elite Four. Like,
without
cheating. It was just, like, it was so easy. And I enjoy the grinding now. Like, that's one of my favorite things to do because I like to grind.
I mean, when playing an RPG, I just love overpowering my team and just destroying everybody. It's just fun. Some people may not enjoy that. I do, personally.
Me too. Yeah.
But, then following X and Y, it was kind of another then kind of like, okay, what's going to be next? And then, of course, the inevitable remakes happened. Like, every gen has kind of had the remake trend. Like, obviously, Fire Red and Leaf Green, were the remakes of Gen 1, and then we had Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which was actually my first experience with the Gold and Silver games, and I actually still think that's one of the finest games in the entire Pokemon series. But of course, with Emerald being one of my favorite RPGs of all time, let alone like Pokemon game of all time, the eventual announcement of the Generation 3 Hoenn remakes, let's just say I was hyped.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember because I pre-ordered Alpha Sapphire because I was going to get the Sapphire because that was my first Pokemon game. And I remember just, like, first sitting, and I already got, like, 6 of the gyms in one sitting. Just because, like, I know the game back and forth, and it was just a nostalgia trip. Yeah. And it didn't end, and I just kept going.
And for me, I also played the game, but I hadn't played the game. I hadn't played the original Rubies.
Gen 3. Yep.
Yeah, the original Gen 3. So for me, it was like a whole new experience, and I was still able to like jump in and enjoy it like just as much. And I also think it kind of took the feedback from X and Y, and I kind of think it improved upon the game.
Like the controls were smoother. Like in X and Y, you had kind of a like a roller skating like mechanic for when you were moving around that would like let you move in full analog, but when you turned off the roller skates, then you kind of were stuck to 8 directions. In Alpha Omega and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, you could it had full 3D control and it was very smoothly designed. Although in building still, for some reason, it was like restricted to 8 directionals, but whatever.
It was still like it improved it quite a bit,
and it incorporated all the additions like the Mega Evolutions and stuff. But basically, it was the same game we know and loved at the time, just with better graphics, and they thankfully fixed the overabundance of surfing, which I didn't mind, but some people did.
And they also added in the Mega Evolutions from the prior game. So, and I think the legendaries like had their own special.
Yeah, they did, but it was like part of it was like part of the plot.
Yeah, but I think they also they did though have a Mega Evolution for Rayquaza, which was cool.
I believe so.
Yeah, there definitely was, because I remember like I would constantly have him on my team because I just thought he looked so cool with his Mega Evolution.
Yeah, I never cared for the legendaries personally, but. Nah, because my favorite Pokemon still to this day is Sceptile, so...
Yep.
Hers is Bulbasaur.
Yes.
Very much Bulbasaur.
Love me some Bulbasaur.
But yeah, after those remakes, then it was kind of like, okay, so what are they going to do for the next game? And that wait was a little weird, because it was kind of like... for some reason, the hype for Sun and Moon just wasn't there this time around. I mean, I still pre-ordered and bought it day one, but this is where things get a little weird, because I still to this day, when I first played Sun, I literally got about 2 hours in, and I just put it down, and I have yet to pick it back up.
Yeah.
Like, for some reason, it just did not click with me.
Well, like a big thing about Sun and Moon is that they changed the gaming mechanics. They changed kind of the whole system. They didn't have gyms. They had they called it like island, like you had to fight island kahunas, and it was kind of weird. Like,
see, I didn't even get that far. Like, I basically got the starter and like kind of went through the first dungeon and just kind of, I don't know, I put it down. It wasn't catching me.
Yeah. So remembering now, they had things instead of gym battles. They called them island challenges. And when you went in, like, you didn't fight, like, people at the gym. You fought, actually, Pokemon in a challenge. And then once you finished the challenge, which were kind of like some of them had, like, little puzzles to them, kind of like the gyms did, then you could actually fight, like, a person, which was, like, the island kahuna. So they kind of, like, it kind of was the same, but they made it different. But I kind of think they almost were taking the themes, because it was based off, like, they based it off Hawaii. I think they were taking the themes of Hawaiian and trying to make it different. But I think it kind of fell short with the fans, and I think it was fun. Like, I enjoyed playing it, but it was different. And I could see why, like, you didn't enjoy it and didn't get into it.
Well, I also think partially this is where the point where I just finally hit the inevitable Pokemon burnout.
Yep.
Which everyone hits at one point or another. It's kind of up in the air when it does happen. And for me, it's since Sun and Moon. Like, I've just not been hyped for Pokemon.
Yeah. And I think another thing, too, is that Sun and Moon, the whole hand-holding, I think was also... It was even more. I think it really did hold your hand even more. But I also think, like, they really, like... tried a lot of different things, and like it was weird. Like, the plot was weird,
which then leads into the Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, not quite sequels, more updated re-release.
Yeah, so with Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, you didn't play it, so basically they rewrote the story, which I was okay with, because the story of just regular Sun and Moon, there's like there's Team Skull, which is kind of your usual team, but also, like, they didn't really, they were there, but they weren't like that big of a buffer. Like, I didn't really find them challenging. But then they also had the Aether Foundation, and that's kind of like who, they weren't villains, but like they were also doing things that weren't right. And I just have distinct memories of like one of your friends, she doesn't really fight, but she kind of keeps track of like the legendary Pokemon. You kind of start with the legendary Pokemon at the beginning of the game, but you don't have access to it, but she one of your little party members is holding on to it, and her mom runs the Aether Foundation. And they also have these weird Pokemon called Ultra Beast. And I think they just really were complicating it, but basically, it got weird. The mom got possessed by an Ultra Beast, and you basically had to fight her mom, and it was weird. Like, it was strange, and I think that's also why, like, they revamped it, and made, like, a new story, because I think it was just weird, and kind of made people uncomfortable, because, like, with Pokemon, you don't usually fight, like, a person.
Yeah.
It was weird.
Not directly, anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, and then after those two games, then of course, the Switch came out, and Nintendo was now basically, the handhelds were no longer a thing, and now we're strictly everything's console now because the Switch is both. So of course it was inevitable we were finally going to get that main series Pokemon title, except not quite yet. So the next major release was the Let's Go games, which were a second remake of Gen 1.
Yep.
Although it wasn't quite Gen 1, it was a remake of Pokemon Yellow.
Yep.
Which was the third version of the first generation, and it was based off of the anime. So you kind of like followed the anime thing, like Jesse and James would show up occasionally, and you'd get like all the starters throughout it, kind of following the anime loosely, very loosely. Mm-hmm. But so they unveiled Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, which was essentially the first games on the Switch, and it shows.
Yes.
I want to say from the start, I did play these ones. Mm-hmm. My description of this game has always been, I have never wanted to love a game so much, but just couldn't.
Yep.
So, where do we want to begin on this?
Well, I guess you can begin with the main, like, not...
Let's begin with the things I love.
Yeah, let's talk about those.
Aesthetically, this game is gorgeous.
It looks amazing.
It looks amazing. Like this, honestly, I think it looks better than Sword and Shield. Not getting ahead of ourselves, but it looks amazing. The presentation is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. It's a huge nostalgia rush.
Oh yeah.
The music's phenomenal. Like everything about the game is phenomenal. Like you feel like you're in a Pokemon game. It's great. The problem is though, the gameplay.
Yes.
Not all of it. Most of the core gameplay is fine.
Yeah.
It's the little things that just hamper the entire experience. Namely, the Pokemon Go incorporation.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to admit it here. I've never played Pokemon Go. I have no interest.
I played a little, but that was mostly because I was on a college campus and everyone was playing it. So, of course, I started in. And I think I played it for a month, and then I was like, all right, this was fun. I've moved on.
Yeah.
I never really fell super in love with the trend, but I can understand, like, why people like it, and I actually did pick it up a little bit when I was in Japan, just because, why not? And there was, like, so many things you could use with it, but other than that, my experience was, I played it with the hype, and then I stopped playing it when the hype ended.
So anyways, getting back to Let's Go, my biggest issue is one of the big incorporations they added was the catching mechanic. Because you don't fight wild Pokemon in the game anymore. Nope. Instead, you catch them.
Yep.
But you have to use Pokemon Go's mechanics, which is like you have to kind of like use the Joy-Con. Because it's weird. When you're playing on the TV, the way I want to play this game, unfortunately, this is where they ruined it. You only play the game with one Joy-Con. Everything is controlled by one Joy-Con. And to catch Pokemon, you have to use the Joy-Con's gyro controls. And it's a pain in the ass, and it's not fun in the slightest. Like, I swear sometimes you'll throw it one way and the ball goes the other way.
Yep.
So the optimal way to play the game is in handheld mode so you can aim properly. But it's infuriating. And honestly, this game's in HD and it's gorgeous. I want to see it on a big screen, but to play it properly, you gotta play in handheld mode. So you're kind of like switching back and forth. And it's weird because you don't fight wild Pokemon, you get experience from catching Pokemon. So this game has an emphasis on just catching every Pokemon you see. It's bizarre.
Yeah. I think also when they were doing this game, I think they were really trying to focus on the marketing and the selling of products. Because one of the little gimmicks along with the game was to buy the Pokeball.
A little Joy-Con that was shaped like a Pokeball that you could play the game with. I've never used one.
I've never used it either, so maybe we might have different experiences because we didn't try that. But for me, I never tried playing it on the big screen. I heard from Bill that it was a no-go, so I did everything handheld. So I didn't really experience the whole one Joy-Con thing, but I will say, like, there were times where, like, I would throw the Pokeball 20 times and I would be like, God damn it, it's just a rat. Like, I just want to catch the rat. Like, that's all.
I did
waste so many.
I will admit, though, I did get a little enjoyment, because the game's kind of, like, different how it handles the storage system, too, where basically you have everything on access at once, at all times. So one of my jokes with my playthrough was I named every one of my Pokemon literally. So I remember Pikachu was Yellow Rat.
Yep.
I think Charizard was, like, Fire Lizard. Like, just weird stuff like that, because that's my mentality now with Pokemon games.
This just reminded me of something. So, speaking of, like, naming things, stupid names, there was, I think in Pearl, you could name your rival.
Yep.
And I'm pretty certain I was super childish, and I named my rival Butt. So all the commentary was like, oh, your butt is here, or stuff like that. Yeah, and I was just like, oh, I was an immature child, everyone. I'm so sorry.
See, I could say what I named my rivals back in the day, but we want to keep this appropriate, so I'm not going to. You can try to fill in the blanks there. I'm not going there. But, anyways, so, yeah, so it's back to Let's Go. It's like, I don't know, I liked it, but at the same time, I didn't like it.
Yeah, you loved, like, the graphics, and you loved, like, the battle gameplay when you did do battles, but then the whole...
Except for the fact that your Pikachu or / Eevee was broken.
Oh, yeah.
With those special moves. Like, that was I never wanted to use the Pikachu. Then you couldn't evolve it, but that's an inherent flaw with Yellow in general, but we'll ignore that for the sake of that's nitpicking at this point.
Yep.
And it's weird. It's like I loved it, but at the same time I hated it. It was
a very love-hate.
Yeah.
No.
I don't know. I mean, you like did everything in it, so.
Yeah, I think I don't think I completed it 100%, but I think I got pretty close to it. And then I think I started playing some different... Well, I wonder what game came out that I started... You know what it was? I started playing Stardew Valley, and I got addicted to that. Yep. So I put that down, and I didn't turn back. And I think that's also one of the flaws of Let's Go, is that I don't have an urge to replay it.
No.
Which kind of makes me sad, because it's beautiful. The game is beautiful to look at, and I would love to look at it again, but I just got no desire to look at it again. So,
all right. Well, right now, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. And we're back.
Hello.
So, after Let's Go, then, of course, the inevitable wait for the next mainline entry would begin.
And that would be Sword and Shield.
So I'm not going to lie, guys. I've never played either of them.
So this is kind of all from my experience playing. And
I'll start off by saying, though, one of the main reasons is right at the start of the launch, the announcement that not every Pokemon was going to be in the game, notably including my favorite, which was kind of partially part of it, not to be a little petty, but...
I think you weren't the only one. I think I remember a lot of people were upset about that. I was upset about that.
Well, I mean, it was just like they finally hype up. It's the first big console entry. Oh, and it's missing about half the content.
So that was kind of like a disappointing start. But for me, I kind of was like, all right, well, you know, they're saying this, but, you know, it looks interesting. It looks cool. The concept was cool because it was set in Scotland, Europe, which was like a totally different environment, which looked really cool. And they kind of...
Plus, you've actually been there before, so you have some sort of
I kind of had some more sentiment to it. I've been to Ireland and Scotland and Europe, and, like, I love to travel, so I can't wait to travel again. So I kind of had some, like, you know, like, this looks cool. Like, I can connect to this. So I was pretty hyped for it. I stayed pretty hyped. I was hyped when I saw the Pokemon, like, the starter reveals, and I know, like, for some people, they were disappointing, but I actually thought they were really cool concepts because they kind of took things that are really popular in Europe, like Scorbunny, like he kind of turns into like a soccer player and like or a football player, and like football there is super popular. And then shoot, I can't even remember my oh, Grookey, that's who it is. Grookey kind of was like a drummer, and then I think Sobble ended up like evolving into like a painter. So they were kind of like cool concepts, and like I thought they were pretty cool starters. They were trying to do something different.
It's funny though, because when the game finally did come out, I still bought it day one, and then it just kind of sat on my shelf.
And it never moved.
No, it's still. I mean, I loaded it into my Switch. That was about it. But the funny part is, usually I would get you the Pokemon games for Christmas every year, but I had to get you something else that year for reasons.
Yep.
So I remember we were hanging out, and we went to a GameStop, and you literally just bought, because I had got Shield, so you had bought Sword.
Yep.
Just randomly, and I was like, okay, well, we'll see how this goes.
I think that was like the first one that I didn't get it for you as a Christmas present, because it kind of ended up being like a tradition, like
that. I would get you the new Pokemon every year.
And then during Christmas break, I would beat the game during break, and that was like my goal. I think I did it for almost every one.
Yeah, because you were playing the hell out of Sword when you got it.
Yeah, I played it a lot, but to be honest, I don't remember a lot of it. It wasn't super memorable. There's things I remember, but like I couldn't tell you about any of the gym battles. I couldn't tell you. I could tell you like some things, but like it wasn't very memorable for me, which was like kind of disappointing. But I guess like some of the main changes was that once again we didn't get our Mega Evolution. We wanted our Mega Evolution, but we didn't get it. Instead, you got the Dynamax and Gigantamax, and it basically like took your Pokemon and made it giant on the field.
I remember watching that when she was playing one day and just being like, what the heck is going on?
Yes. So, I mean, like, it was an interesting concept. I liked it a lot more than, like, the Z moves that they did in, Pokemon Sun and Moon. But, like, still, like, I really wanted the Mega Evolution, just like everyone else. But, like, that was kind of, like, the cool gameplay, dynamic. And then there was also the, like, what is it called again? It was the... It was where you basically grinded, the whole grinding area. I can't remember it, but there was like this big woodsy area, and I remember I spent like hours there just grinding and leveling up my Pokemon.
It's weird though, because like once you beat it, you kind of just put it down and never went back.
Yeah, and I think I beat it way too quickly, because I think I beat it in under a week, and then the downloadable content didn't come out until like a couple...
A good amount after.
I remember
because I noticed it because it came out around the same time as the Fire Emblem Three Houses DLC. Because I remember buying that over it when that came out.
Yeah, and I didn't buy the download. I think I went through it too quickly, but I also think it kind of had the same problem of it held your hand a little too much. So I leveled up my Pokemon. I didn't really have trouble beating any of the gyms.
Yeah, because the game brought gyms back and everything, right?
Yeah, but then it's funny though, because it brought the gyms back, but then it got rid of the Elite Four.
Oh, okay.
So rather than the Elite Four, it was a tournament, and you basically fought with other people, like even like some of the gym leaders, like you fought with people for the right to battle like the champion. So it wasn't like a standard Elite Four. You were just basically fighting people that you've already like battled with. So it was like an interesting take, but still it was kind of like was like, no, I wanted the Elite Four. I was like, we're so close, we got our gyms back, and then nope, you took away the Elite Four.
Yeah, so that's basically where we still are at this point, because they haven't really announced anything since that I can tell.
Well, I think like there's a few other things to cover. I mean, like there was also like the villainous team, which was Team Yell, and their plot line was kind of funny because they were like the first team that wasn't really like a villain. They weren't, because instead of a villain, they were actually fans of one of your rivals. So one of your rivals is a girl, and her brother is a gym leader. So basically, like, they're all part of the gym, and they basically are trying to eliminate any of her rivals so that she can become the champion.
Okay.
So it kind of took the whole team concept and, like, just kind of threw it away. And I didn't really find them really super likable. I kind of thought they were more just like, oh, great, I gotta fight these people again. And then when it was revealed, like, why they were doing it, I was like, oh, like, there's no evil plan to it. Which is kind of, I mean, that kind of sounds dark, but, like, I kind of like the evil plans. Like, that's one of the reasons why I loved X and Y so much.
Well, it gave you a reason to actually fight.
Yeah,
you mean Black and White?
Yeah, Black and White. Whoops. Not X and Y.
X and Y was that was kind of dark, too.
Black and White was just, like, it had such an interesting, like, you were like, wow, I really want to beat these people because I don't want my Pokemon taken away. And, like, now it was like, oh, I'm fighting these people because they are just trying to stop me so that my rival can win.
They're the original simps.
Yeah, kind of. They're simping. So that was kind of like, because honestly, like, I remember some things, but even, like, the legendaries, like, I think you got the chance. All I know is one shaped like a sword and one shaped like a shield. I think I only got the chance to catch them after I beat the champion. And I remember, I don't really think the champion was that hard. Or I was too overpowered.
Probably a little of both, honestly.
Could be both. Because I remember going through the tournament, like, I had no trouble. I one-shotted everything. Like, it was too easy.
Probably partially due to grinding, but...
Yeah, I think that's partially my fault. I did, like, grind, like, a lot.
But the game also made it a little too easy from what it sounds like.
Yeah. Especially because when you were grinding in, like, the woods area, I think it was, like, you got more experience, or, like, you got, like, some sort of, like, items that gave you experience, so, like, it was on, like, I grinded.
I remember you complaining about it at one point.
Yeah, I did feel like it was a little too easy. So, I'm kind of hoping with the next game that they kind of take some of the concepts, but they also... I would really love for them to bring it back to the basics.
Keep in mind, though, neither of us have played any of the DLC, so we have no no way of really talking about that, if it actually does improve anything.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to download the DLC eventually, but I think I've kind of moved on to, like, different games at this time.
The next time I get the Pokemon bug, if that ever happens again, I think I might finally play Shield.
Yeah, and I think I'll re-pick it up and I'll download the extra content.
The DLC, yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, other than that, I mean, there's also the spin-offs.
Yes.
The spin-off games. And, I mean, we're gonna, like, I'm not gonna get super into the mystery dungeon games. Mm-hmm. Not because I don't have any interest in them, mostly because I actually have played a good amount of them, but that's enough for its own discussion at another time. And I also don't want to get into the Ranger games because I really haven't played them yet. Mm-hmm. I've played a bit of the first one, and it's an interesting take. I need to get more into them. But the first real actual spin-off that I remember personally is the trading card game, believe it or not. Not the card game itself, but the actual video game version of it, back on the Game Boy Color. That was honestly, it was funny because I didn't have any of the Game Boy Color games, but I had the trading card game cards. And honestly, for what it was a pretty solid version of the card game to play. I mean, it had a decent story, and it was easy to understand. That's actually the only way I ever played the card game, now that I think about it.
That's really fun. I didn't even know that existed, so...
It's obscure, but it's pretty cool. But, I mean, after that, then there was the N64 games, like the classic Pokemon Snap.
Yep.
Which is getting a sequel, which is amazing.
Wait. I'm really excited.
After how many years? But it was cool, a cool little rail shooter spin-off thing that had Professor Oak in it. Mm-hmm. And then there was the Pokemon Puzzle League, which was a decent puzzler, even though it's the same puzzle game that gets a version on everything. And then, of course, there was the two Stadium games, which were pretty cool. I mean, it was cool to see the Pokemon battle in 3D, even though it wasn't an actual like RPG by any means. But it was cool, even though you needed the transfer pack to like bring your Pokemon over, or you could just use the rentals. And I mean, it was mostly you played it for the spectacle, even though the battles were incredibly slow. And I mean, and then there was Hey You Pikachu.
Yep.
With the microphone adapter that kind of worked sometimes. Pikachu was a real jerk sometimes too. Yep. By the way, he throws things at you and it's just rude. I didn't play much of that one. I won't lie. But then of course you get to the GameCube and we had Pokemon Coliseum and Pokemon XD, which were like the closest we had at the time to a legit Pokemon game on console.
Yep.
But they were just not quite there to really be worth playing, in my opinion, because they're kind of honestly they're kind of boring. I mean, some people really enjoy them and more power to them. I've never really been able to get super into it.
They just weren't a cup of tea.
No, it's just because the story is kind of bland, and then the battle system it's all double battles, and I'm not a huge fan of double battles. And I mean, XD was slightly better, but I don't know. And I think there might have been a Hey You Pikachu sequel on the GameCube too, but I never played that one.
I think my experience with the not secondhand, but like the spin-off games was actually when I was in Japan. I went to a lot of arcades in Japan because they are everywhere, and I think at every arcade there was always the Pokemon tournament game. And that was actually pretty cool because you actually were able to like create an account and then kind of pick up where you left off every time, and you were able to like battle people every time, like just people all across like Japan and the world. No, like you actually fought, like you could battle like a computer.
This isn't Pokken Tournament. It's a legit Pokemon tournament game.
Oh yeah, no, it's like Pokemon tournament.
I thought you were talking about Pokken Tournament, the fighter.
No, it's like an actual like tournament, like arcade game, and you can like fight with random people who are also playing the arcade game and like create teams, and like you can like gain experience and like battle. It was really cool. Like we're gonna do a podcast eventually just talking about Japan and stuff, but that was really cool because you were actually able to like save your progress, create an account, and then you were able to pick it up.
I didn't even know that existed.
No, it was sick. I couldn't understand anything that was dialogue related because it was all in Japanese, but I had a good time. It was really fun. I actually won quite a few battles. I lost horribly so many times because some of the people I went up against were amazing, but there was a couple battles where I did win, and it was really fun. A really good game.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, so eventually when we can go to Japan again, me and Bill are gonna go on a trip there, and I'll show him it. But until then, I'll just have to tell him about it.
I mean, another great Pokemon spinoff, and when I say great, that's quotations because it's not great at all. Do you remember when the Wii came out with Pokemon Battle Revolution?
I think so. Did we play that together?
So it was basically, it was like Pokemon. It was like the N64 ones, but just worse.
Yep.
Like, yeah, the battles were slow, and I remember I just imported all my DS characters from Diamond over, and we just kind of battled, and it was boring.
I think we didn't play it that long. I think it was one of those games where, like, we played it for maybe, like, a week, and then we never picked it up again.
It was just bland and boring. It was, like, such a I feel like it was rushed, too.
I think they made it for the sake of having a Pokemon game on the Wii.
I don't know. I've never done much research into that game, so all I know is I didn't enjoy it in the slightest.
Yep.
And I mean, that one was bizarre, and then of course there was Pokken Tournament, which was a Tekken-style fighting game, which I've played a bit of. It was one of the few Wii U games that came out towards the end that was interesting, and then the Switch got a port eventually.
Yep. And
that one was pretty cool. And then any other spin-offs you can think of?
No, I mean, like, unless you, like, think about, like, I don't know, Smash Bros, where it's like, oh, they kind of integrate, Pokemon.
That's not really.
But not really a spin-off, but that's, like, the only other things I can think of, like, where Pokemon is at least, like, integrated into something, so.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean that's basically our overview of the games. So now let's get into a bit of let's talk about our favorites in the series.
Yes.
So like first let's say maybe like favorite games. I mean for me it's Pokemon Emerald is one of my favorite RPGs of all time and my favorite Pokemon game period. And next to that I'd say I have an incredible soft spot for Heart Gold, followed by X for the nostalgia factor, Black, and then Platinum. I've had quite an attachment to in recent years.
I'd say for me, I've kind of already said it, but my favorite was definitely Black and White. I love those games and I played them so many times, but I'd also have to say that probably Pearl has a soft spot. I know it's like kind of slow and it's not the very best game, but it was what kind of started me getting super into Pokemon.
You should probably hunt down a copy of Platinum at some point.
I should.
Because it's literally just Pearl but better.
Yeah, I think I will at some point, but I definitely would have to say those two. Those two are probably my favorites.
Okay. So next, let's talk about favorite Pokemon.
Bulbasaur.
I mean, Bulbasaur, and I've said Sceptile. Other favorites, I have an incredible soft spot for, from Black and White, I love Snivy.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. I loved Snivy.
But that might just because Snivy's basically just Sceptile.
Yeah. And he becomes an awesome snake superior.
Yeah.
I love his evolution. I thought it was really cool.
I love all the evolutions in Black and White. Black and White had some really solid Pokemon. I think a lot of people just didn't like that the originals weren't there to begin with. But there were some really nice ones, especially the crocodile guy.
Oh, yeah.
I forget his name right now.
It's Krookodile.
Krookodile. I love Krookodile.
Like, he was cool. Krookodile was one of my, favorites in that game. He's always part of my team. It's always Snivy and it's always Krookodile. And I'll change some of the other ones, but those two always remain on the team.
Other Pokemon I love Flygon. Flygon's a huge one of my favorites. Always on my my Gen 3 or Alpha Sapphire team. I love Argon. He's a big favorite. A lot of Gen 3 Pokemon, as you can see.
Yeah.
I've always had a soft spot too for Magikarp and Gyarados.
Yep, I usually have Gyarados on my team as my water type. I'm brain farting on the name, but probably another one of my favorites, Frog, Poison.
Krogunk?
Yes, Krogunk. I love Krogunk.
You liked him, and you loved Abomasnow, too.
I loved Abomasnow. That one was... I might not have pronounced that right, so... Sorry, but I loved Abomasnow, and then I loved Krogunk, and I think if I had the chance, I would put those on my team. But I think I always tried to pick an electrical too, so I'd either have Pikachu or Raichu.
I love Pikachu. Mareep's a good one. Or,
yes, Mareep.
What is it, Ambrose or Umbro? Whatever his third form is. I'm brain farting right now on what it's called.
There's so many.
Oh god, there's so many Pokemon. Another classics. I mean, I always love the generic bird type too that you get in every game.
Yeah.
I was always a Pidgey fan. I love my favorite Swellow, definitely from obviously from Gen 3. I love a lot of Gen 3 Pokemon, if you couldn't tell.
I think a lot of the bird ones have always been really good designs. I don't think they've ever done one that's been
I like Starlo and or Staraptor or whatever in Gen 4.
Oh, yep.
That was a cool one.
Oh, I think I really actually like the Sun and Moon. They had one, I can't remember his name, but basically it turned into a giant toucan, and it just brought me joy whenever I saw it.
Yeah. Alright, so favorite Pokemon. What would you say your favorite set of starters is? Not starter in particular, but your favorite set of them, all three, just all around?
That's tough.
It is, because, inherently I want to say Gen 3 with, Trico, Torchic, and Mudkip. But to be fair, I only ever pick Trico in that generation. If I want to think of a generation where I've actually picked all three, it's kind of cliche, but I want to say Gen 1.
Yeah. I will say I've picked multiple on Gen 3. I have done Mudkip, and I have done Torchic, and
Okay.
I've also done Trico. So I think those are really solid starters, but I also agree, like, Gen 1 is just, like, really solid set of...
Gen 5, Black and White's really solid, too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Tepig, I know it's a pig, but it's funny, but
Yeah.
I like Tepig. Obviously Snivy, and then Oshawott.
Yeah.
Like, they're all solid.
I also think an underrated Gen 4.
Gen 4 was okay. My problem with Gen 4 is the fire type. I like the fire type in that one, even though that was kind of the problem where, like, the firefighting kind of got old.
Oh, is that the monkey?
Yeah, I forget his name right now. But I mean, it's hit or miss. They're all solid.
Yeah.
I mean, Gen 2 is solid too. Honestly, I think the first gen where I was kind of like, was I didn't really care for Gen 6 that much with X and Y.
Yeah.
Like, I picked Froakie because I like frogs.
Yeah,
that was like one of the rare water types I've ever picked.
No, I also picked Froakie for that one, but it was just because, like, I didn't really love the other two stars. I mean, like, they're cool, but, like, I didn't really fall in love with any of them. But I have to say, like, Froakie was the coolest one. And I think he was actually ended up being the most mainstream because he
got into Smash Brothers.
And then he also played a pretty big role in the Detective Pikachu movie
Did
too.
He? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen that, so we're gonna.
You have to watch it. I cried.
Okay, I'll watch it at some point.
And it wasn't because it was sad. The reason I cried was because they had so many Bulbasaurs.
Oh, okay.
And it was just like, that's my dream. I just want to live in a world where Bulbasaurs are real. And I'm not kidding. I started crying in the theater.
We'll probably do after I see it, we'll probably do a whole review podcast on that.
Yep.
But yeah.
I'll cry again.
Honestly, when I think of the gen, I mean, not counting Sword and Shield because I've not played Sword and Shield. I'd say the one gen where I have like no real thoughts at all is
Sun and Moon?
Sun and Moon.
Yep.
I picked the Fire Cat for my, like, 2-hour playthrough.
I ended up picking the owl.
Oh, yeah, because it looked like Blathers.
Yeah, that was the only reason I picked it, because he looked like Blathers from Animal Crossing. And I think I ended up nicknaming him Blathers, so he was Blathers throughout the whole game.
Nice. Okay, so moving on from that, favorite team?
Favorite team?
I mean, it's kind of cliche, but Team Rocket. I love Team Rocket.
I'd have to say for me, it was, I really like Team Skull, because they were just, like, they were kind of that one thing that kind of kept me playing during, Sun and Moon.
Okay.
Because they were kind of just, like, goofy.
Okay.
And just enjoyable.
Well, I mean, I kind of like Rocket because they were kind of a threat, but at the same time, they were kind of comedic, too. I mean, this is not counting the anime version, which is a complete joke.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I liked Rocket. I mean, as much as I love Gen 3, I will admit Team Aqua and Team Magma's whole motive is just stupid. Like, 'cause that's not going to work anyway.
Yeah.
Team Galactic, I liked their design, but I have just... Their motive completely blanks on me.
Yeah, I think it was just that they wanted to... I think it had to do with kind of, like, rebuilding the world.
It was like space and time. And...
Yeah, it had something... they were trying to... Well, because I think it had to do with... They were, like, causing natural disasters throughout the game, and I think they were trying to, like... Basically, I think they were trying to end the human race and rebuild... Something like that.
So every team, basically.
Honestly...
Except for Yell, but we don't talk about Yell.
Yeah, we don't talk about Yell.
And then, of course, Team Plasma was definitely the most threatening.
I think, like, Team Plasma was, like, almost the most realistic, too. Like, it actually felt like something that would make sense. And they were almost, like, I almost thought of them as the most, like, compelling team. Like, you almost, like, agreed with them, but didn't agree with them at the same time. You agreed with their ideas, but... not how they were doing it. So it was interesting. I really liked them too. I kind of didn't think about them when I thought... I don't really think of them as the same as the other teams because I think they're so different. And I think that game is kind of...
It really also helps too that the main quote-unquote villain of the game ends up being such a relatable character. Like, I honestly, the two most relatable characters in the entire series are N and Silver from Heart Gold.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're just they actually have arcs and personalities.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's probably more than that. I'm just going off of the two that I have memories of.
Mm.
So, I mean, other than teams, I mean, we got. How about the anime? Favorite movie?
Favorite movie? See, that's hard for me because I remember watching a lot of the movies.
I only remember watching up to a certain point. Like, I remember, obviously, the first one.
Mm.
Everyone remembers the first one.
And I kind of think that one kind of has to be my favorite because that's, like, the only one I remember. Like, a lot of the other ones, like, I don't remember. But I think I should watch because I actually think a lot of them are on Netflix.
Are they?
There's a lot of Pokemon movies on Netflix.
See, I remember the one I remember the most fondly is 2000,
mm-hmm.
just because of the boat. Never forget the boat, but also that really awkward CG like flying thing.
Yeah.
I always remember that thing because the trailers it was like, whoa, that looks cool, and then you grow up and you're like, that looks terrible.
Yes.
Like, oh my god. I always remember that. The third movie I remember too, just because of the unknown. I always remember seeing the beginning of that one when the building gets covered in the crystal stuff. Like I always remember that. That was an interesting one.
Yeah, the movies for me, like they weren't that memorable, but I also think that has to do with the fact that I was super into anime, so I was watching a lot of other shows at the same time.
Oh, yeah, and
so I think that
the Pokemon anime is objectively not that good.
Yeah, it's not the greatest, and
I mean, he did finally get a championship, win the championship though. It only took, and he's still 10.
He's still 10.
I don't know how that works.
That's so weird.
But I mean, you know,
anime logic.
I mean, the anime watching it growing, we stopped at Sinnoh.
Yes.
So by the end, basically, ironically, the game we love the most is the point where we stopped watching the anime.
Yeah. No.
Because I know nothing. Basically, from the black and white anime on, I have no knowledge. I remember I watched up to the end of the Diamond and Pearl stuff, and then that was kind of it.
Yeah, no.
I think partially it had to do with Brock going away.
Yeah, I think we both were just like, it's not the same without Brock, and like, we just weren't able to keep watching.
Yeah, it was odd. Well, then we kind of grew up because that was by then I was going into high school.
Yeah, and I think we were kind of watching more edgier, not edgy, but like
you were probably watching more edgy anime.
Yeah, I think actually at that point that's when I started watching Bleach. And I was like, I'm mature now. Oh. And then I look back and I'm like, why did I watch all of Bleach? It's not very good.
We'll save that for the anime episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, moving on from that, I mean, of course, the card game's still around, but now it's kind of like, I don't know.
I think I see, like, even more like, I always see like, you can buy the cards at Target and Walmart. I see them all the time, and it was really funny when I worked as a summer camp counselor a couple of years ago when I was in college, and I remember, like, the kids actually were bringing in the card games, and they were playing, like, the actual card games, like, during free time. So I think it actually has kind of had a resurgence, but I haven't been playing it, but I did see a lot of the campers that I, like, watched play it, so maybe it's coming back and we just don't know.
Well, I mean, it probably never went away. We're just old now.
Yeah, we're old. Ooh.
So do you remember my quest to collect every physical Pokemon game?
I believe I've heard about it, yes.
So one of my goals recently has been to collect a physical version of every mainline Pokemon game. Not quite the spin-offs yet. I might get to that eventually. So I've actually been going around to like flea markets and conventions to collect every cartridge and like every basically I wanted to have all the physical cartridges and then all the cases for the DS games onward. So I basically when we went to Retro World, I remember going from booth to booth because I had to find Heart Gold. No, not Heart Gold. I had to find Fire Red, and then I had to find Ruby, and then I had to find Soul Silver.
Yep.
Those were like the three things I needed to find. And I remember I found Fire Red and Ruby for about, I think I paid $50 combined for both of them. But then I found Soul Silver, and the guy wanted $70, and I was like, No.
No.
It's like I can't right now.
I wish actually I might have the box still.
Well, no, I have it now.
Oh, you do?
Since then I've collected.
Womp womp.
Yeah. Since then I've actually collected pretty much. I have all of them from Red and Blue up until Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. Mm-hmm. I don't have the Switch games yet because I can't justify buying Switch games that I don't really need right now.
Yeah, because they're expensive.
And at some point I want to get a Japanese copy of Green just to have.
That'd be cool.
Because it's technically its own original game. Yeah, so that was my quest there for a while, and I might try to get the spin-offs too, because I do have all the mystery dungeons.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah, so I mean, there's stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not as huge of the collecting, but I kind of lived through it through you, so I can't wait to see you do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
update me on your progress.
You'll see it on the blog.
Yep.
But anyways, it's kind of funny because looking back on it, I think you're actually probably the bigger Pokemon fan than I am.
Yeah, which is surprising because I think it kind of flipped. Like, you were the bigger fan, and then, boom, I became the bigger fan.
I think what happened was I started playing more RPGs that weren't Pokemon.
Persona.
Well, not even just that, just a lot of RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think, honestly, I'm actually surprised how much Pokemon has been in our lives.
Yeah, like, it really has. Like, when we were thinking back, like, to brainstorm for this podcast, we really realized, we were like, wow, like, Pokemon has been in our life since we were, like, really young kids.
Yeah, pretty much.
Really young.
I mean, it's been in most people's lives. I mean, we basically...
Oh, yeah.
We've lived through the whole thing at this point.
No.
It's kind of fun, though, looking back at it.
No, it's definitely fun. It's definitely a fun series. Definitely something, if you haven't picked up, why not pick it up? It's really fun, and it's really easy to start.
Yeah.
I think anyone can
Especially
do it.
Nowadays. They're so easy to pick up.
And it's a great way to get into RPGs, because...
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's definitely gotten me more into RPGs. And it's been able to, like, kind of expand my horizons of gaming. So, I'm really grateful to Pokemon.
Well, that was a fun talk.
Yeah, that was pretty fun. I think that went a lot better than our first podcast.
Well, because we knew what we were talking about.
Yes.
Well, anyways, guys, thank you for watching the second episode of the Gaming and Collecting Podcast.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.